Have you ever seen a movie called Bug? I remember renting it back in 2006 when it first came out on DVD. Much to my dismay, it wasn't a horror movie about actual bugs. It turns out that the movie was based on an off Broadway play by Tracy Lett. It's the story of a lonely, battered housewife, played in the movie by Ashley Judd, living a trailer park existence. She encounters a disturbed Gulf War vet, played by Michael Shannon, and being a lonely, battered housewife, very quickly falls in love with him. Now, to say that this guy's disturbed is an understatement, as he makes Glenn Beck seem actually sane. As it turns out, this guy has become convinced of some sort of paranoid psychotic fantasy and conspiracy theory that the government has implanted microscopic bugs under his skin as part of a military experiment. Now, I'm not talking about tracking or listening devices. I'm talking about actual multi-legged insects. And he believes he's infested with them. As the movie goes on, the war vet draws Judd's character deeper and deeper into his psychosis to the point that not only does she believe his crazy story, she eventually comes to believe that she has become infested as well. The moral of this movie, at least the one that I took from it, is a very simple one. Crazy is contagious. This past Monday, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann announced her run for the Republican nomination for president in Waterloo, Iowa. True to what has become form for this woman, she began by mistakenly claiming that Waterloo was the birthplace of actor John Wayne. As it turns out, she got the name right, just not the person. The John Wayne who was actually born in Waterloo, Iowa, was not the actor, but the serial killer John Wayne Gacy. As gaffes go, this is not a major bon mot, but when it comes to Michelle Bachmann, these kinds of brains-free research challenge slip-ups are not only par for the course, they actually endear her to her brains-free research challenge followers. Why? Simple. Crazy is contagious. Michelle Bachmann's relationship with the truth is much like that prostitutes have with their Johns. Fast, loose, and worth about $100 for the hour. The real truth is that whenever Bachmann gets caught in one of these gaffes, not only does she refuse to acknowledge them, she doubles down, like she did in her interview on Good Morning America when George Stephanopoulos asked her about her claim that the founding fathers worked tirelessly to end slavery. Not only does she stick to that lie, she adds the claim that John Quincy Adams was a founding father, even though John Quincy Adams would have been 9 years old the year that the United States signed the Declaration of Independence. Now, some historical perspective here. Most, if not all, of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, including Thomas Jefferson, as well as the delegates at the Constitutional Convention which produced the United States Constitution, owned slaves. They bought slaves and even sold them. Jefferson did indeed include anti-slavery language in the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, but quickly removed it when many of the signers objected. Likewise, the subject of slavery was debated heavily during the Constitutional Convention, and some of the delegates threatened to not sign the Constitution and even leave the convention if anti-slavery language was included. This led to the so-called Three-Fifths Compromise, which deemed that black people in America were considered three-fifths of a person. None of this constitutes working tirelessly, as most of the framers of those documents were more interested in protecting their interests than in any moral reconciliation. Benjamin Franklin eventually became an abolitionist and freed the two slaves that he owned, but only after the Revolutionary War and after the signing of the Declaration and the Constitution. To say that the Founding Fathers worked tirelessly to end slavery is like saying that an obese person is anorexic because he skipped lunch. But don't try telling all of this to Bachmann or her followers who have taken to scrubbing Wikipedia to prove her non-existent point and to make it seem as though she was right all along. Of course, Bachmann's fabrications don't stop at her revision of history. She's made the claim that the Affordable Care Act, Obama's healthcare reform, will cost Americans 800,000 jobs, but doesn't acknowledge that most of those jobs that would be quote unquote lost, according to the CBO, would be lost when elderly people decide to quit working because, thanks to the Affordable Care Act, they no longer have to stay in jobs just for the health care. She's also cited an unknown source stating that an Obama trip to India cost U.S. taxpayers $200 million, a claim that has been largely debunked by most credible sources. She's made a claim this past Sunday that President Obama has released all of the oil from our strategic oil reserve when in fact he's only released about 60 million barrels out of over 700 million barrels, which amounts to just over 4% of our reserves. These are just the top of the Bachmann hit parade. I can fill up an entire blog site going over the gaffes, misstatements, and outright lies that spew from Bachmann's mouth like diarrhea after a bad burrito. But my point is that none of this matters to her followers. They'll buy anything that she's selling and defend her against anyone who would dare to correct her misstatements because crazy is contagious. Now, Bachmann hardly has the market cornered when it comes to lemming-like followers. That honor belongs to the undisputed queen of the flying monkey drones, Sarah Palin. When she managed to get the midnight ride of Paul Revere all kinds of wrong in an interview, claiming that he rode through the town shooting guns, ringing bells, and warning the British that the English weren't going to give up their guns, first she tried to blame it on a gotcha question from the media, then doubled down on her answer, insisting that she was right. Her drones took to scrubbing Wikipedia and other sites to make it look as though she was right all along. These are the same people who took to gaming the voting system on Dancing with the Stars so that her daughter Bristol could win the competition. Ultimately, she didn't win. This is the kind of brain-free, logic-free, blind devotion that has these people believing that she is actually an intelligent candidate for president, even though she isn't even running. Crazy is contagious. The current Republican field of presidential candidates includes a black candidate who spends most of his time denying that he's black, a candidate who cheated on his previous wife with the woman who is now his current wife, a candidate who is running against the very health care reform that he initiated in his home state as governor, a candidate who equates homosexuality to man-on-dog sex, and a candidate with so little charisma that a contest between him and grass growing would probably end up a tie. These people have gone full tilt crazy and doubled down on the paranoid, hateful, racist, xenophobic, homophobic ideology of their constituencies. And their constituents have fallen for their unbelievable bullshit that the president isn't from this country, wants to take their guns and Bible, and that cutting taxes for corporations will result in prosperity for them, even though it hasn't over the past 10 years. Now, at the end of the movie Bug, the two main characters become so neurotically paranoid that they end up dousing themselves with gasoline and setting themselves on fire. This is pretty much what the Republican Party is doing right now. They're so desperate to get back into power that they've embraced the most extreme fringes of their base, dousing themselves with the extremist gasoline of ideology, and are now moments away from striking the match. And their constituents, whom I like to believe are otherwise intelligent, sane, and well-meaning human beings, are dousing right along with them. Because, after all, crazy is contagious.